Today we have another new batch of information for Odyssey. This comes as a part of an AMA posted to the official forums and contains details on NPCs and the interface and much more. So let's take a look. The HUD within Elite spaceships has a multitude of different uses, and many of these features have been added over time. For example, night vision arrived in 2018, 4 years after the game's launch. It makes sense then to wonder about the interface and the HUD for the on-foot sections in Odyssey. So, first up then, how exactly does the radar work in Odyssey? Well, it turns out it's actually much like the radar in ships. Both NPCs and players will show up on it, and it will be possible to distinguish between the two much as you can in ships. One question that might come to people's minds, however, is regarding stealth. Frontier have previously stated that it will be possible to sneak into ground bases. However, what does this mean for the radar and other players? Frontier state that they are still in the process of reviewing how PvP and the HUD will actually work, so they are unable to comment on how player visibility and stealth will actually function in the game, at least for the moment. With just 4 months until release then, this could perhaps be a case or a cause of concern in terms of game design. I guess only time will tell. In terms of night vision, this will be available as a suit upgrade and won't be available in suits by default. Lights are also an upgrade. Now, the idea of lights as an upgrade felt kinda odd to me until I learned that all the suits come with a torch as standard. So lights are obviously an improvement of some type over torches. Lights and night vision then are just two types of upgrade that will be available for suits. Frontier said that they will be revealing more details on this particular feature in the future. Now, for over half a decade, players have been asking Frontier to officially support HUD colour modifications. The default orange is something many people, especially those on consoles, would like to have the ability to change. Unfortunately, this feature is not something coming to Odyssey, and not only will players be unable to change ship HUD colours, but they will also be unable to change the HUD colours of the UI when on foot. Additionally, Frontier state that it will not be possible to turn off HUD elements. In short, it seems as though HUD customization is completely out, a very unusual move for an MMO which traditionally do support some types of UI changes and alterations to varying degrees. Frontier have said, however, they are still taking feedback on board regarding accessibility. Now, moving on to NPCs, there's quite a lot of new information here, so I'll try and break it down as best as possible. Combat zones on planets will contain a mix of both AI characters and players on both sides. This means that ground-based combat zones will work more or less the same as space-based conflict zones, at least in this particular regards. Difficulty within the combat areas will be affected by the BGS and the area's current state. This will also affect the overall theme of the settlement. Now, one big feature for Odyssey, of course, is combined arms. That's the ability to get vehicles, troops and ships all into the same combat. So, what about NPCs? How will that work for them? Well, it seems that NPCs will be unable to get into vehicles, which essentially means they won't move from running around on foot to jumping into an SRV. I would assume, however, that they will still be NPC-controlled SRVs and ships, although Frontier didn't clarify on that. They did say, however, that NPCs will be able to enter the conflict via dropships. Now, as with any game, NPCs will have specific behaviour. AI, of course, includes the ability to investigate the areas that they inhabit and even attempt to track down players. How well they do this, however, will have a huge impact on the quality of the overall experience, and this is something that I'm certain players will be pushing to the limits. Whilst NPCs will follow many of the same rules as players, they won't be bound by the same set of rules entirely. For example, the line of sight for AI is governed by the same rules as it is for players. However, NPCs will not be governed by the same rules for suit oxygen and energy usage. So on that subject, how exactly does oxygen and energy work for players? Okay, so we have seen from the HUD in the screenshots and from video clips that suits have both power and oxygen levels. Power is consumed by specific actions, such as using the jump assist or using the suit's shields. If a suit runs out of power, it will lose life support. At this point, the suit's emergency oxygen supply will kick in. This is limited and when it runs out, players will asphyxiate. Loss of suit power will also have other negative effects, such as preventing the player from using a jump assist, in addition to negatively impacting audio. This in turn will reduce the player's situational awareness. So there's no word yet on how the suit's power will recharge. Will it work like ships and slowly recharge over time, or will players have to return to a base or a ship in order to connect with some type of power source? Whichever way this works, the AI will not be affected by power consumption, as they have a supply of batteries on hand to recharge their suits, which kind of suggests that players will not have this ability. Finally, quite possibly like many people, I've been curious about whether or not Odyssey will have some type of law enforcement down on the planets to help keep bases and other such locations safe. So just as stations currently have a security force that checks for criminals, planets will also have the same. The planetary security force is known as Omnipol. A corporation-wide establishment, Omnipol is responsible for public safety and protection on all planets and all cities and facilities that are accessible to both Omnitech. Wrong game. Here we are. So Omnipol will be responsible for public safety and protection on all planets and bases. Frontier have stated that they will be kitted out with the best gear, so it's unlikely players will be able to stand against them for very long. So that covers all the new information we have right now. A lot of this is definitely very combat-centric, but it gives us an indication of where things are going with Odyssey. I do hope though in future AMAs we hear more about the gameplay that is non-combat related, such as how things will be with exploration and scavenging. Looking forward to hearing more about that for sure. Let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.